Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Mike Mausteller. Mike served as the leader in the launch of brands such as Victoria's Secret's Pink and their sports line VSX, from ideation to $1 billion in annual revenue. He now brings his experience in accreditations, certifications, and education to propel the growth of small and medium-sized businesses throughout the U.S. He guides the achievement of this through coaching, consulting, training, public speaking, and other online education tools. Today's Mike is here with us. He's going to discuss some of the key value deterrents that can be filled in to maximize the proceeds of a sale of a business. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Oh, I'm super excited. For this show. I know it's great work, and it's not common these days. There's still such a huge gap, and I believe the youngest baby boomer right now is 58 years old, and baby boomers own about 2/3 of the businesses in America. So there's $10 trillion or more in value that needs to be shifted over the next several years. So I
was just reading somewhere that said, I think it was either 5 or 10 years. I'm going to butcher this, I know. But either in the next 5 or 10 years, there's as many as 25 million jobs will be lost if those baby boomers don't do a succession plan, hand this over, sell it, keep the companies running. So let's just jump right in with you guys. Let's talk about, how did you get into M&A? I like to always ask people, you were born, now you're here, kind of fill in the gap in between. How did you end up in front of me?
Right. Yeah. So out of school, I was a buyer. Right out of college, I was a buyer of ladies' coats and outerwear. And, I tell everybody it's the best start to any career you can get. People don't realize the buyer, they write their own marketing, they buy their own product, they choose the price, they choose the markdowns. If there's logistics issues, you learn how to work through those. So you really get a great view of it, the whole company. And so fabulous start to my career. And what I realized at the time was I loved everything new. So at that time, it was new launches, new products, new marketing campaigns. I loved them. So my MBA was then focused in new and emerging businesses. Following getting that MBA, I left Macy's and went to Victoria's Secret, where I worked on 2 concepts over a 3-year period. One of those concepts was VSX, or their sport apparel line, right? Yoga pants for Target, not so much for the gym, right? And we got that business in 3 years. We got to $300 million. And at the same time, simultaneously, I don't know how else to say it, but time is not your issue, folks. I promise you, it's the toolkit you're using if you're not getting what you want. At the same time, I ran another business that was a 2-person test concept when I showed up. At that 3rd year mark, I turned back over to Victoria's Secret, a 35-person self-operating business unit that did $1 billion in sales that 3rd year. So I spent much of my career following that, obviously feathering your cap as a young gent, still in my late 20s at this point. Companies I worked for after that was typically someone who knew me from my past, knew what I was doing at Victoria's Secret, and brought me on board either through the CEO or the CFO, say, hey, make room for this guy. He's going to do all of our new product launches. So launching a business, think about it, right? When it starts, just like every small business, I owned every hat, right? When someone says go, I'm literally writing a pitch deck, not for an investor, but to take to other department heads and say, this is the support I'm going to need. Here's my projections. This is why it's going to work, etc. So I'm really running the whole business and creating the first step in value, which is something, right? It has to start with sales. And so through my career, I started to get more and more focused on this concept of value, right? There's just too many retailers, which is where most of my career was spent, who are looking for that quick dollar, markdowns, promotions. You get people in right now, and unfortunately, what they do is they significantly hinder the value of their brand by degrading it through these constant price breaks to the point where many get to where they have virtually zero sales if they don't have some sort of promotion going on. And so that was where my first interest in the value space originated. And recently, in the last let's say 2-3 years ago, I had two different business brokers that were just in my network approach me at different times, but both with the same issue. I have a business right now where the owner is so involved in the business, I can't possibly sell it. No one is going to want to buy a business where they have to work 90 to 120 hours a week, like some of these folks are doing. It's so it's just not a business. They own their own job. And in both of those cases, I was able to have them invest in developing leadership roles and responsibilities and delegating to the point where they weren't the person putting out the fires every day. They could be the person looking forward. What's my next growth category? What's my next growth market? Right? How am I going to move forward? And so by doing that, I took what was worth nothing other than owning a job and created a business from it. And in both of those cases, the brokers were able to then put the business on the market and sell it. And that's when I said, there's really something here beyond just the sales driving and I've been doing, building, new concepts, new markets, new teams for people. There's this whole idea of the value of a business versus the value of a job. And so here I am today. I've got my SEPA certification. I'm the president of the Ohio Exit Planning Exchange, and we're helping companies every day with the team that I've formed create value, not just individual sales.
So what is an exit value exchange? Because I seen that on your website and I was like, that intrigued me. It's the first time I've seen that phrase used.
Yeah, so the Exit Planning Exchange is actually a national group.
Hmm.
They have chapters, and most of the chapters are by city. But here in Ohio, with the network that I had, and the fact that all three cities are basically within about 2 hours of each other, I negotiated the whole state. I wanted to have a bigger impact anyway. So I have the whole state as the president. We've got the backing of a national chapter who provides a ton of information and educational resources, as well as networking across the various chapters. So that's XPX, the Exit Planning Exchange, and here in Ohio, we've formed a team that basically you can lift us up and set us down in any exit planning project, and we can take you all the way through from the value building all the way through the transaction.
That's awesome. That's actually a very valuable service. I constantly run into business owners who want to sell their business, but when you get into it, they just have a job, right? They might like, well, I have 5 employees, and you start looking into it. When somebody tells me they work 90 to 120 hours a week, I was like, can your business afford to hire 4 new people right now? And they're like, why? Because when you leave, I have to do that because I don't want to work 120 hours a week. Right.
Yes.
When you leave, I have to hire that sales rep, that marketing rep, the general manager, right? And like a lot of times the maintenance guy, the owner is the guy that goes out and fixes the tool. Like I asked him, who does the maintenance on your machine stuff? You have a contract with somebody or something? I don't see a maintenance contract. Nah, I've been in this business for 40 years. I go out and fix it. It's like, I don't do that.
The
Right.
next person hasn't been in that business for 40 years and does it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? And, so there's real value in helping an owner understand where they are, right? And where they need to get to be. I'm not a big believer that you need to show somebody, or at least somebody needs to know all the steps in between. You don't need to know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z. You need to know A, you need to know where you're at. You kind of need to know what Z is, what your end goal is. And somebody needs to show you B. And if you should focus on just getting B done and then figure out what C is afterwards. If you did that, a lot of people get a lot further in this. I think a lot of the reasons business owners don't work with guys like you or do this process is it kind of seems overwhelming.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
how do you break it down for them so that they can actually add value to their company, make it sellable, and it just doesn't seem like, a 15-page laundry list of all the things they need to do.
Oh, yeah. Actually, just the way you explained it is how we work. So, in order to get Z, I personally work with a financial wealth. Well, she's a wealth planner, right? So
Mhm.
she's managing wealth, not selling insurance and things like that. So she's managing wealth, and so I have my clients first sit with a lifestyle designer and decide what do they need. You've been working 90-hour weeks for 40 years. Do you really think you're going to say stop and you're going to be happy? So our lifestyle designer is trained in this area to be able to ask, hey, do we need to set $200,000 aside for you to have a passion project to kind of unwind for a few years slowly, but still own something? So anyway, we design the life, and then they go to our wealth planner, who of course says, okay, to live this life that you've laid out until you're 99 years old, this is the number you need to sell your business for. And that could come back, $6 million. Well, I then will do a business valuation through Biz Equity, which has got the deepest database of companies and transactions to pull from. So I'll do the business valuation, and let's say the number was 8, and I come back and say, okay, it's 6.5 is what your business is worth today. Sometimes the number is literally 0, like we discussed, but in this case, let's say 6.5 out of 8. So do you want to cut your life by 20%, your lifestyle by 20%, or do you want to look at the next page, which is here is where you stand against your industry competitors in things like your cash flow, productivity, the tenure of the team, and we look at all the facets of the business, even in some things that are intangible, and say, okay, I can get you 80% of that $1.5 million gap. Probably going to take us 18 months. Let's, in this case, I don't know. Sometimes it's 12, sometimes it could be 36. I can get you 80% of this value in 18 months, and it's going to cost you 100 grand. And you're going to end up with, $1.2 million of the 1.5 out of this. And then, yes, it is one project at a time. Sometimes, so if we have to, let's say, clean up the books, right, that I can pass off to our CPA and have them clean up the books. The owner is then free, and we can work on a sales system if that's what the next step is. But it's really the whole focus is a step, because we always go after the lowest hanging fruit, right? Lowest effort, biggest value initiatives first, and we grow them, we sequence them. And so at any time, we've captured the most value we could get, right? So if I say it's going to be 36 months, right? Some businesses, that's what it is. If we get 24 months in and they look and say, okay, that's fine, I'm done now, right? I'll sell it for 7 million or 7.5 million, right? I'm not going to wait longer for the rest. Fine, they can do that. But because of the process we built, just like you said, I know A, you've developed Z with that wealth planner. And now we're just going to walk through the steps. And if you want to be done at T, we can be done at T. And that B was the most valuable thing, and then C was the most valuable thing. So we've maximized it for you along the way.
So having somebody on your team that can get inside of that story that they've created in their head, break it up a little bit, and give them a plan for what to do next will help solve this, $1 trillion problem you were talking about earlier, right? Millions of businesses set out there with, what I think was 20, 25 million employees that are going to go away in the next 5 to 10 years if people don't make a decision to, start handing these businesses over to the next generation.
Yeah. It's sad to think about. I mean, it's somewhere between 10 and 13 trillion dollars of business value could evaporate if there isn't smooth transitions. And the folks who go on the market each year, only about 20% of the businesses are saleable.
Yeah.
And so you think about what that looks like, not just to the owner, but as you said, to those employees. So, in my practice, one of my favorite things, and we celebrate it every time we hire a new person. not to fill a role, but a new position. If we add a position, that's a celebration. We go out and have lunch because we created a job. We sent some kids to college. We fed a family. We, whatever that is, a vacation. I don't care if it's part-time and it's just, someone that's one of the spouses working for the vacation fund, whatever it is, we just made some mission of somebody easier by creating that job. So that's a celebration. So when you talk about 25 million people losing their job, not to mention the trillions of dollars of value that'll disappear. Yeah, that doesn't sit well with me. I wish you wouldn't have said that, Ronald, because now everybody I don't help, I'm going to be thinking about the jobs we lost, not just the value that disappeared.
It's what pulled me out of, I was in the real estate industry and started pulling me out of this. I started seeing those numbers and I was like, I know business. I have an MBA. I like business. Should probably take a look at this. And the more I dove into it, I was like, okay, well, here's a problem that really needs some help solving. So let's just jump into solving that problem. A business owner comes to you. Let's just say they're doing okay. Maybe they're at the $1 million in revenue mark and they've got 8 or 10 people, but they've been doing this for 30, 40 years. And they're still pulling 60 to 80-hour weeks because it's just what they love. They wake up and start working on it. And when they go to sleep, when they can't keep their eyes open anymore, they quit working on it. So that's just the way they've been. What is you talked about a little bit, they go through the lifestyle, stuff like that. How do you, I guess the next step is you set them down with your lifestyle guy or gal, and then you put them through the kind of a business valuation, and then you gave them a step-by-step plan. At what point can you see that tension relieve, right? Because there's a weight that people carry knowing that they don't think they can sell their business. They just don't think they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes this process so much better, because I'm not just telling you it's sellable, and I'm not just giving you a number. I'm basically confirming your future life is in good hands. Right? We're going to get you to that. So this is, it's really that future visualization that people have. So now what we're doing right now is we're not selling your business. We're getting you that beach house. We're getting you that 200,000 passion project. We're giving you 2 trips to Europe a year. Whatever that is that was in their plan, that's what we're delivering. So when you're working towards that and not just value in your business, as soon as they make that, and you can see when they make that connection, like, hey, I can get you 80% of this value in the next 12 months. Wow. I'm only a year away from, living the life that I dreamed of. Wow. That it's a different realization, because it's, like I said, it's not just numbers. I've worked for companies where literally I can sit down and say, for the projects I came up with, I led and executed, their profitability is 20% of the company's value right now because of those, based on EBITDA and things like that. You could, based on earnings ratios, price PE ratios. I can say I literally created 20% of the value of this company, public company, multi-billion-dollar companies, and it's not nearly as rewarding when you're sitting across the table from a business owner and you're coming down that home stretch and things are just clicking, and they're not leaving their business. They're starting their next act. It's a totally different mindset change. Like you said, the soap person, someone like that, I would probably pitch to them, listen, something could go wrong at your age, at any age, right? I mean, anybody could get hit by the bus, but at that age, anything could go wrong. You want to keep running the company, fine. But let's get a president in here and let's develop a process where you hand off the most important things based on your vision of the future growth of the company. And they're there to execute it, do the paying, they're there to put the 90 hours in. And yeah, you're paying them a salary that you're not getting, but you're still in charge of your business and you're still making money. And hopefully, we'll get it to the right number where it works for them. So he could be potentially right now grooming his successor. Don't have to go away, because at 78, I mean, if he has a stroke tomorrow, I mean, pray he doesn't, but at that age it happens, right? At any age.
He just had it. Over, I think it was last Christmas, not this recent one, but the one before that, he had a stent put in his neck to try to prevent a stroke because he had a partial blockage in his neck. So, and I just got called this week or last week that the health's not there. So I'm going to have more conversations with him. But you brought up something earlier as far as like how a business owner comes up with what they think they need out of their business. It's interesting. I get on calls with business owners, and sometimes they bring up a number early. I don't encourage that. I really want to build rapport. So if they start talking numbers off the bat, I usually I'll circle back around and say something to the effect, "Hey, we'll get to that." Right now I just kind of want to understand how you built it. But if somebody comes and says, I want $1.5 million for my business, instead of saying, "How did you come up with that?" I was like, great, let's take a look at your business and we'll see how we can get you there. That's my job as a mergers and acquisitions, nerd, acquisitions entrepreneur is, what does the business owner need or want? And if you ask them how they came up with it, sometimes like, well, I talked to my CPA and they said, if I want to retire at this income per month, that's what I need. Or they have some logic behind it. It's not necessarily connected, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, no one's going to pay you that amount of money because they want you to retire successfully.
Exactly.
They're
So
buying the future cash flow of this business. Yeah.
the last one we had that conversation, we got pretty deep into his business, kind of in probably middle of due diligence. And I said, look, the only way you're going to get into that valuation is you almost need to double your business. Now, we can do that a couple ways. You can work with a business coach to help you with sales and stuff because he was doing all his own sales. And I honestly think he could have brought on a sales team and just destroyed what he was able to do on his sell. I
Mm-hmm.
said, the other thing is you can work with me. I can find a similar company that's needing to retire. They're about to shut down. We merge you guys together, but you're not, you'll get a higher evaluation, but that other owner is going to get a big chunk of that too, right?
Right.
Because of that. So there's a couple of different ways we can get you where you want to be, and a lot of people don't get that. It's like, well, I need to be at 1.5. My business is only worth, say 700,000 right now. I can't sell it. It's like, yeah, you can. You just got to do a little work to get you to the 1.5, right? And you don't have to do it on your own. There are people like you, like me, and other people out there that will step in for a piece of equity or a fee or some, for something of value. We'll help you get to where you want to be in your goal. Let's talk about, you mentioned before the show, and in my notes there, I see you said there's some key um, like elements or determining or detriments, or you want to call it, that can be filled in to maximize the proceeds of a sale. So, what are some of those values that a business owner needs to look at and be aware of that, if that area was performing better or was in place, they would sell for a higher valuation?
Yeah. Yeah. I call them potholes because that's what they are. They're a big, ugly hole that if someone else sees it, it deters from the value of the business, right? They're going to, from that initial offer letter, they're going to discount what they're going to pay, right? But all these potholes can be filled in. And so what we do is we pick the financially optimal number of potholes to fill in, right? Some of the things are, you've probably seen this story. The wife came along with the husband when he first started his manufacturing company, and he had two people he was managing. He was on the manufacturing floor, but she did the books. And then the company grew. And now we've got someone who really isn't a CPA who's doing the books of a company that's doing, $1 million, $2, $3 million in sales. And think about that from the perspective of a potential buyer. So you tell me, when I buy, she's not staying around when she didn't even want to be in this in the first place. She's just doing the books to keep him in control, right? Make sure he's not spending his money at conferences in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
And so what we recommend there is let's go hire CFO type, whatever, controller type, whatever is appropriate for that size business. Hire that person now, because you don't want to be at the sale table and tell the person, oh, by the way, the person, the owner who's been running this, the president who's been doing your marketing and running the manufacturing floor, he's going to disappear. Oh, and by the way, the person who knows all the finance and where all the little pockets of money are and everything else, oh, she's going too. Right? So what we do there is we're going to replace her while we have plenty of time for her to teach the new person and onboard them. And we're probably going to go get a sales manager as well, so that the only person that's leaving is the head of manufacturing, right? and that's a role you could typically hire for. If somebody wants to bring in someone to run the shop floor, they bring in someone with experience, and it's a pretty easy hire. So that's one of the big ones is in a family-owned business, how much of the business is family? And are they really going to be part of the transaction, or are they getting some part of this proceeds so they can go do whatever they want with their lives? It's actually is also one of the things that hinders people from wanting to sell is what's going to happen to my people.
Yeah. Well, I
So
find that's more critical than how much money am I going to get in my pocket. I've seen more than one business go to not the highest and best offer. I mean, best offer would be subjective to personal opinion, I guess. So it's not the highest dollar amount offer, right? A lot of business owners see the best offer as the one that pays a reasonable amount, takes care of my people, maybe preserves my legacy and my brand if that's important to me. A lot, it seems to be to quite a few, and that dollar amount is, I've seen quite a few business owners tell me that they took the second or third. They were close a lot of times, but they didn't take number one. They didn't, somebody offered 1.5 million and the other guy said 1.3, but he owns a family business. He's going to be around and he wants to just fold this into his and keep the brand and, keep it around and keep all the employees. It's a safer pair of hands. So, there's something to be said for that, offering a safe pair of hands to the business owners. That's what I look for. Is I look for businesses I can be a safe pair of hands for the next, and leave it as a legacy for my kids.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and all these things are controllable.
Yeah,
You know, and that's part of the. You mentioned people jumping right off and talking about money, and that's just not a great client for you. It's the same thing. Like we we're getting ready to go into probably the biggest negotiation of your life. Let's first understand all of the things that are valuable to you, right? Let's have that conversation. Oh, your employees are important. Great. We're going to put it in place right now that we're going to make the contract now so the next owner is held to it, that anybody who's terminated within the next 2 years gets a $50,000 payout or whatever, that 3 times their salary, whatever the number is. We can work all these things in. But if you just start and jump in, I need to sell my business now, it makes it a little bit tougher. If you want to do the fast sale, you lose a lot of the liberties that you have if you're looking ahead. And we can whatever the obstacle is, we can work through it. It's just a matter of understanding what is value to you.
I was just eating. I stopped for breakfast this morning at my favorite restaurant, and I didn't even know the lady at the cash register was the owner. And she's like, "You're here a lot. What do you do? Like you have to own your own business because you're here at random times throughout the day." And I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "I run a podcast," and I told her. She goes, I buy and sell businesses." She's like, "You want to buy a restaurant?" And I was like, "You seriously thinking about selling this?" It's an iconic restaurant here in town. It's been around like third or fourth generation, and it's a little hole in the wall buffeteria type of thing. And now everybody listening in Tulsa probably knows what it's called because that's part of its name. But the owner was like, "I think I want to sell." I said, "First of all, I don't buy restaurants, so, just because it's a lot of work." She asked, looked at me like, "Why?" I said, "Because I have a lot of respect for you and a love for what you do. It's a lot of work for a low profit margin." She was like, "Yeah." So the secondly, I said, "If you really want a business, sell your business right now, you should have been planning 3 years ago." Right?
Yeah,
There's some work you need to do, and you can get it done in less than 3 years. But if you're really serious about doing it, you're thinking in the next 5 years, I'm out of here. Start talking to some people that can help you. You know, position yourself to maximize what that looks like at the other end. I was straightforward. If you come to me now and say, "Hey, I got to sell this right now," it's to my advantage, not yours. Right?
yeah,
If I do decide to take it, you're going to take a lot of concessions because you just weren't ready. Like numbers in this industry, and small to medium businesses run from 1 times your seller's discretionary earnings to 3x, and you're going to be on that 1x side, 1 to 2, 1 to 1.5, just because you're just not ready. Your books aren't ready. You know, you've been running this for 30 years. Your dad handed it to you, so she got it. But it was just concerning to her. Is like when she said she could see the look in her face when I said, "Well, if you want to really sell it, you should be planning. You should have been planning 3 years ago."
yeah.
What's your gut feel on that? What's the timeline? I'm a medium-sized business. I'm an operator. I'm in there working every single day. How long do you think it takes for these guys to shift the gears and make it ready to sell?
I say ideally, you want a 5-year horizon. What that gives us is 2 years to improve the business meaningfully. That could be 50% more sales at a higher margin or higher earnings ratio because we cut expenses as well. And then it gives us 3 years for that to show up in my earning statements for 3 years, which I'm going to present to a buyer. So if you come to somebody and say, I want to sell now, they're going to look at your last 3 years. Well, if you've been working with somebody for 6 months, most of it's not baked in, right? And you have to tell the story, right? So here's my new ratio. I had someone come in and look at the cost. I renegotiated the contract. It'll look like this for you going forward. I mean, you have to sell that. Versus here it is for the last 3 years. I've got it built in, and this is my best foot forward. And my sales have grown 5 or 10% even in those years afterwards, whatever it is. So you show a trajectory. Maybe it's 25%, but you're showing that's the story. You're selling them on that, right? The growth during that period. You're not selling them on, well, my last 6 months have been great, so just assume that forever, right? It's totally different mindset.
I probably speak to and with more acquisition entrepreneurs than most because of the podcast, and I do big business networking things with just mergers and acquisitions people. And I can promise you, the circle of people who are buying businesses, very few of them put any stock at all in coulda, woulda, shoulda. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of business owners, if you're doing something for the last 6 months, you've made some major changes, even if they're running really well, we're still going to average that off over the last 3 years, like you said. And we don't buy into your coulda, woulda, shoulda stories, right? You
Right.
know, like I actually had a business owner trying to get 3 times what his business is worth because he says, I'm really this close to landing these contracts. It'll triple my business. And I'll help, I was like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I promise you, if you really want to have this conversation, it's going to be worded in there that my offer is price X and you get a bonus of YZ on those, whatever. There's 3 of them out there. There's 3 contracts he thought he could land. So I'll give you a big chunk, a big bonus out there. 3 of you'll get a higher valuation when we close those and the first invoice is paid. Right.
Yeah.
And he was really pushing back on that. He wanted to sell on, this performa type of thing. Well, this is what we can do. And I was like, I just don't buy on coulda, woulda, shoulda. I don't know anybody that does.
No one
So
else is going to pay for it either. Don't feel bad, Ron.
it's scary, right? And I don't hide the fact that I'm new to this. I've been in real estate for a while. I've been in this for 2 years now. Played a part in a really big project, and so I might be a little more reluctant than some, but I don't know. Like I said, I talk to mergers and acquisitions. We refer to ourselves as acquisition entrepreneurs. I talk to people in that space all the time, and I haven't met anybody that's willing to pay for coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. No one buys your plan. If so, I can make amazing plans, right? I can put any number you want on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You're going to pay me for it. But yeah, no, it's like I said, ideally, in that case, you can explain, right? If just the third year, if just the most recent year numbers include that, but you've got these people locked into a multi-year contract, all of a sudden, okay, now that's the base, that's the year I'm looking at as a buyer. But like I said, it's so much easier if you don't have to tell that story. Get it baked into 3 years of your history. You should. The way the process works when we do it here at XPX in Ohio, it's all value creation. And what value means is it's worth more to whoever owns it, right? Just simply, well, what if it's still you? What if we made it that you're working 40-hour weeks and making 30% more than you did before? Maybe you want to stay there, right? All of a sudden, you don't have to leave. And when you can get to that place, that's where you can hold out for that strategic buyer who's going to pay you more because they look at the business as a bigger opportunity with them combined than it is for you alone. And when you get to that point, you're free. Like you have a normal job that's paying you even more than you got before when you're working crazy hours. And you've got this chance to unlock a buyer who may pay you 2 or even 3 times what a financial buyer might pay, right? Someone who's just buying it for the cash flows.
So I brought this up on a couple of other shows, but I'll bring it up to you because you actually coach inside of this space. I had a gentleman call me. He said, I've heard of Aqua Hire. Can you help me or find me somebody to help me Aqua retire? And I was like, I've never heard of that phrase before. What do you mean? He goes, well, I've run this business. My kids don't want it. They're not really equipped to to take it over anyway. It's a very specialized business. There's a smaller business within 50 miles of us who is run really well. He actually knew they were running on EOS, so like really systematic and stuff he wish he had implemented. He goes, I want to work with that guy. I want to acquire him, right? I'm much bigger, 3 times the size of him. I want to like give him a 40, do a 60-40, do like some type of split, give him a big stake in it and have him be the CEO and earn it over time and pay our family trust over time. So my kids get a better inheritance with this guy running it, and at some point we might just own, he'll be the majority owner. We'll be a minority owner. And I was like, that was a brilliant idea and a great key phrase. I was like, we're going to coin that and keep that. So, it's kind of merged with another guy so that you can step out of management. I like it. And then not every industry has like the ideal subject. He did some research and found somebody that like it was one of his competitors. He's like, this guy's stealing some of my clients anyway, so I want to talk to him. Right. So what do you think about like just different strategies to get the owner, if the owner needs to retire sooner? What do you think about that type of thing where you acquire another company that has younger staff, better management in the same vertical, right? They could pick up your product line fairly easy.
Yeah, I love that for the right situation for sure. Not as as you said, it's not you can't just put that at market that. I want someone, people couldn't even understand the concept from any marketing language. But if you can find that deal, it's great. The other option is working with a team like ours. Doesn't have to be us. It's not a pitch. This is a podcast. But when you work with a team like ours, we have fractionals, right? So we have someone who could come in if you get sick all of a sudden, or just need to go now. We can bring in people who can run the company on a fractional basis while preparing it for sale. So that's another option. If you can't, if they're not as fortunate as this person to have a business within 50 miles that's run well and can come in, the other option is definitely the fractional route. And we maintain a full C-suite and the second level, right? So we have a CFO, we also have an accountant and a bookkeeper, right? And the same thing. I've got someone who can run your HR, or I have a person who's a benefits specialist, a person who's a legal compliance specialist, et cetera, right? So we have this team built, and others do too. Again, it's not a plug for us, but fractional is definitely another option for people who get to that point for sure.
One of the things to bring up here, and I like to point this out on most of the shows, is if you're thinking about, if you're getting up there in age, you have any medical concerns, or even me, I just turned 50, and for the first time in my life, I'll be 100% transparent. They put me on blood pressure medicine, right? I had chest pains one day, and I started looking through all my operational agreements, but I've actually seen, since I jumped in the M&A space, I've seen at least 3 businesses here in my local market where one day everything looks cool, and one day you drive by and it's like, where's all the cars there? That was a thriving little business. One was electrical. When I first got into this, I actually reached out to a friend who seems to be able to, he knows everybody in town. I was like, what happened to so-and-so electrical? He goes, I'll look it up. So he calls me back and goes, the owner passed away, and they're having a hard time because nobody can write checks or payroll or anything. He didn't have anybody in his operation agreement. Nobody else is on the banking system. There's no there's nothing there. So there's nobody that has the authority to cut another check without his signature. So he has 16 trucks, about 18 to 20 electricians. They did residential and commercial, or, and a commercial building. And they ended up, like, I watched it, they ended up just auctioning off the trucks at the local auction. They just liquidated the assets, and all because he never thought to say, in my operational agreement, and I went and changed all mine in my operational agreement that, like, in the event I'm incapacitated and unable to do anything, you know, checks can be signed by my wife. And I actually didn't know if this was, I haven't even talked to my attorney yet, but I used to do insurance. I put per stirpes, which means per bloodline. So if I forget about this 10 years from now, and my kid, my 11-year-old is now 21, right? It says per steps. It says my wife, but if she can't do it or she's gone, it says per bloodline. So my son can do it. It'll go right down the bloodline like an insurance policy would. But a lot of people overstep that inside of their operating agreement, inside of bank statements, inside of other stuff. And if something happens to them, you know, a lot of these businesses don't have enough cash on hand, accessible cash on hand, to survive. a 6 month to 18-month probate system.
Yeah, I mean, well, it wouldn't matter if they had the money. They couldn't access it in that case, right?
Right.
So that's just sad. I mean, even if they had the money, that yeah, the business can't. Employees are going to have to find new jobs, and even if you could then get it out of probate, you've got nobody left. What does that even look like? So yeah, it's important. In fact, that's one of the first things we do is risk, right? We work on risk because you might as well at least capture all the value you have today. Right? At the very least, let's not lose any. Let's make sure your family gets something. Um, and with that, we'll do company owned, often company owned life insurance policy on the owner. So when
Yeah.
that happens, we can then quickly access money to go hire somebody
Key man
with
policies.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, key man policies as well. That's very important. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely go through that, all the risk phases. Yeah, we
I've
talk about
I've opened up operation agreements with 3 partners, and there's no buy-sell agreement at all in the operational agreement, right? And now they're mad at each other, and they need to sell, and they're going to have to negotiate and agree upon, and all three sign a buy-sell agreement to pin their operational agreement with, and they're at a stage where they're just done, right? They're done with each other, right?
right,
And they all think the other one did something wrong. So this stuff is important that people understand. There's a reason why, like, there's so much stuff we look through for due diligence. um I had a guy, we started the due diligence process. I thought I had a deal, and in that looking through his operational agreement and stuff, like, hey, your name's not on any of this stuff. He goes, "Yeah, it was my dad's." I was like, "Did you never admit it? You got any signatures where he handed over?" Like, "No, I showed up to work one day. He put me on the bank signature card so I could sign checks. They put the HR payroll people on there so they can issue payroll checks." And I said, "Yeah, but you didn't go to your attorney to update your legals and your documents and verify stuff." And he's like, No." And I was like, "Well, is your dad still around?" He was like, "Kinda." I was like, "What do you mean, kinda?" He's like, "He's in a memory care facility." I was like, "Well, he's not legally competent to sign any documents anymore. You walk into a memory care facility with legal documents and they'll run you off." Ask me, I know. I didn't know any better. And I walked in and they're like, they'll call Adult Protective Services on you.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, for sure,
So, like, you don't want to do that. That was a very awkward conversation. I went in with somebody with their son, and it was for a real estate deal even. And they're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, he needs to release his property." Like, he can't legally do that.
right.
So, what do you do with that? I mean, I guess that's step one when somebody comes to you early. Is there, you go through their documents, you do a little bit of due diligence, you do a risk assessment, you put key man policies, company owned insurance policies in place. Um, you know, what are the other? I'm sure there's other key value deterrents. All right, we already talked about the books are a mess. Owners working too many jobs. What are the other ones that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so the after we get again that risk or ensured the value we have today remains,
Hmm.
then the first place that I always turn is sales. If the owner is 80% of your sales force, that can be a big deterrent for a buyer. Does that person buy from you because they're cousin Joe, or because of your relationship? You used to play golf and he knows he's paying a nickel more per unit, but he's okay with it, but he's not going to be okay with it when it's not you. I mean, we don't know all of these things. And if you're on the outside and 80% of the sales are tied to someone who's not going to be there when you take over the company, it gets scary, right?
Yeah, one of the guys was telling me on one of these shows, he bought a company, and it was I don't think we released the show yet, but anyway, he bought a company, and the owner had been taking the top 7 or 8 customers on an Alaskan fishing cruise every single year. Like, they go up there together, right? And he's like, "I don't even like fishing." And like, I forgot what time of the year, but I guess that time of the year came around where they're supposed to go up and do the salmon or whatever fishing. And all these people started reaching out to him and going, "Hey, are we going on the trip this year?" And he's like, "What trip?" He said he did it the first year because he had no idea. Like, he did his due diligence stuff, but the owner never told him, well, I take my top, customers. And now he thinks he's going to lose customers over it because they were paying, he thought he had a great brand and they're paying us, like you said, 5% or 5 cents per unit, a little bit, more than other people. And it's because nobody wanted to give up their, Alaskan fishing cruise, with this guy. He had the same guy, same boat, always could find the fish. It was a fun trip for them to go on. I was like, he said, what should I do? And I said, pay for the damn trip. It's not that expensive.
Yeah, it's
You
going
know,
to be less than the marketing
Conti-
expense of trying to get your customers back.
I was like, I told him, it's like, if you don't like fishing, I love fishing. Send me on the trip. I'll entertain your clients. So, anyway, but yeah, there's that. There's what is that relationship between the owner and their top clients? What about, we were talking about things that could be detriments to the valuation. Do you look at things such as customer, what am I looking for? Dispersion, or like
Yep.
over
Yeah.
concentration in one or two key customers?
Yeah. So your customer concentration, I really like to see everybody under 20%. That 20% number kind of scares me, right? That's a fifth of your business. That could disappear because, somebody else shut their business down. They were sick of it, or what. It doesn't even have to be anything related to you or your quality or your product or anything. It's just somebody else is having an event. So yeah, I really don't like to see anything above 20%. I know some people will give a little bit, but I would prefer if I can add up your top three and get to like 20%, 25%, right? So there's somewhere between, 8 and 10%, 8 and 15% each or something like that. And that I feel a lot more comfortable there.
Do you see, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Did you see one-time revenue as a detriment instead of something where, like, I'm trying to think of a situation here, but in a case where you sell a customer one thing and it's good for life, right? It's the, John Deere tractor. They're not going to need another one for 40 years, unless they buy another farm, right? They might need tools to go onto it, but they've got that tractor that's going to run for 30 years. Do you see that as a detriment? Like, or do you see that as just a normal part of particular businesses? I guess the real question I'm asking, do you spend time trying to figure out how to get monthly recurring revenue into a company, so that, because I know that's valued higher?
Yes. So the automatic customer is on the shelf over here. And yes, we're always trying to drive to subscription model. Mm-hmm. Not always a true subscription, but the salesperson calls on the 15th and you buy your widgets, and and every month we're doing that. It has two factors. Number one, they're stickier sales, right? They're very sticky. Number two, it smooths and evens out your sales flow too, right? So if you have a seasonal product, if you can get people to even place that a little bit earlier, you can sometimes afford to give them a price break because you're not paying overtime for it during the peak season with your staff. So I like to look at that, and because smoothing that out makes the business run easier. You don't have to, what they call, build the church for Easter, right? if every church built for Easter, they'd have tons of open seats the other 364 days out of the year, right? And so yeah, that smoothing effect is big too. Not to mention, obviously, the stickiness of a recurring customer. I worked with one client. They didn't even have a subscription button on their website. Right, they didn't even have it. So this is on the other. This is a startup on the other end where we were building for value to sell. Had about an 8-year horizon, and without that subscription button, 97% of the people who bought something in the prior quarter bought again. They came back and bought it.
That's impressive.
Wow. Like, think about that. Now, if we get the subscription button on there, it's only going to get better, right? And so every time customer, you maintain a customer. I mean, pretty much at 97%, I mean, you're maintaining that customer. So think about what that means to the next person who's buying it. This business is stable and it can only grow, right? Now, does that 97% stick forever? Probably not. But in the first 3 years, that was the number that they were riding on for 3 years.
I think I equate it to my previous experience being a real estate investor that I love recurring revenue, right? That's what I'm like, even in the home services, right? I own a pest control company that's not recurring. If it's reoccurring, you got a problem, right? I have a few recurring clients. I go check a bunch of Airbnbs. We do inspections on them about once a month just because they have a high chance of getting bed bugs and other stuff. But most of my clients, I go in there, I do my work, and they don't call me back until they see something crawling across their counter again, right? So I own one of those. But I like companies like, oh, I'm trying to think, lawn care. I don't own any of them, but I think it's brilliant because it has to be done every month, right? Pool cleaning services. I've been looking at those. I think I might get into that just because they get done every couple of days, right? Like once a week, twice a week, somebody comes by and checks your chemical level. Recurring, you get a customer, as long as you treat them well and you get great customer support, you know, there's a pretty good chance you got a customer for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, so that goes with, I think that can be done in almost any business. I think there's some element to um, creating long-term clients that come back and buy things over and over again. So before we go too much further, it is kind of getting close to the top of the hour. Let's make sure people know how to reach out to you. I didn't verify this link with you beforehand, but I'm gonna put it on your screen real quick. Make sure verify that's right.
That looks perfect.
Cool. For those of you guys who are on the podcast, it's actually his LinkedIn. So it's the standard linkedin.com/in, Mike, Mike, and then it's hyphen Mausteller. It's Mike, Mike, hyphen Mausteller. And is there any other way you'd like people to reach out to you?
That's perfect. That's actually my preferred method. Let's chat and go ahead and connect, and you can follow my content. I can follow your business. That works out perfectly.
Cool. And then right now we're at 54 minutes, so we're kind of wrapping up the top of the hour. If you had one key takeaway, one myth you could dispel in the industry, or if people walk away from the show and they only remember one thing from Mike, what do you want them to remember?
When it comes to value, you cannot believe that everyone thinks like you. You have to think like potential buyers. So if you, for instance, silly example, but if you want to sell in the next 2 years and you potentially want to sell to someone who would take over your operation or maybe combine it with theirs, don't sign a 5-year lease, right? For a price break. And you can be tempted to do that. Well, it costs less. They're going to like this. Well, not if somebody wants to shut it down. So stop thinking about what's good for you and concentrate on, if you were going to buy this and you are the most skeptical person in the world, because every buyer is, they're all tied for the most skeptical person in the world. What would you need to do, demonstrate, or prove to yourself, right?
Awesome. I like that. So if you're selling a business, put yourself in the shoes of the buyer, and what would you need to prove to yourself to buy that business? So if you walked in off the street not knowing anything about your business, what would you need to see, like, and be shown about the business that would attract you as a buyer? I like that, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Cool. Well, I appreciate having you on. We are kind of at the top of the hour. Thank you for being here. Hang out for a few minutes after the show, and we'll chat for a second or two. Other than that, if you have any other things to say,
Well, when do I get to come back? It's been a great
I
chat. Really
I
enjoyed it.
I I think it's fun. It's so much fun on these shows. I look up and go, "Oh man, we're already at the top of the hour. We could go on for a lot longer." So I do appreciate it. We'll probably have you back. I'm going to do a series just for everybody to know out there. I'm thinking about doing a series where we pick a topic and we bring an expert on and we actually walk you through and teach you a deep dive into a particular thing. Right. So that might be something. When I break down that mini series, I'll reach out to you and go, here's the 15 topics I think we ought to teach somebody on. Which one would you like to do a 45-minute segment on? And we can even break out slides or whatever you need to do to get the point across. So maybe we can do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd love to talk about how the valuation is built, even so people understand all of the important pieces of that. A lot of people would fire their mutual fund company if they didn't get their quarterly statements. but most of us don't know the value of our business right now, and it's probably 10 times more valuable than that mutual fund statement. So, get out there, check your value, and maybe when we get back together, we can talk about some of those big chunks of value, the 80% rule. It'll be fun.
I get a lot of business owners. I ask them for their balance sheet and their income statement. They can find those. And then I ask them for a cash flow analysis showing me their month-to-month or quarterly cash flow for the year, and they just gloss over, like they don't even know what that is. And I was like, well, it's really critical because I kind of need to know if you have seasonal,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
that's how I see the seasons and stuff inside of your business. I can see them in the others a little bit, but I really want to see, you know, are you like there are businesses out there that look like they do really well, but like half of the year they're robbing for Peter to pay Paul, right? They're
Hmm.
they're they're
Absolutely.
so. All right. Well, I appreciate having you on here. I am going to end the stream. That's the show, everybody. Thank you for being on, and hang out for just a second. Hey, it's your host, Ronald Skelton. I want to thank you personally for watching the show today and invite you to call our new hotline, 918-641-4150. That's 918-641-4150. Call us and tell us about our show, ask questions, suggest a guest, or even tell me about a business you have for sale, and we'll reach back out to you. Again, that number is 918-641-4150. Call our hotline and leave us some information. Thank you. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind combines the traditional peer-to-peer mastermind introduced first in Napoleon Hill's famous book, Think and Grow Rich, with accountability partnering, where your peers help you ensure that you set goals, take actions, and get results. If you want to scale, blow past roadblocks, and achieve success faster than you might think is possible, I suggest you take a visit over to TIEPM.com. That's TIEPM.com and check out the Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind.